My father is gone. His passing was a curiosity to the medical field. All that remained of him on the day that the doctors found him dead was a skeleton, covered in shriveled up skin. No organs, no fluids, no muscle, nothing. Before he died, he left me a letter on the side of his hospital bed. Inside, I found his story. Fear grips me as I read it. I believe him. Everything that I have written above is a compilation of his letter. Information I have found throughout the years, and interviews I have conducted. I have written it in what I believe to be chronological order. Teotihuacan, 25 miles northeast of Mexico City. My love for ancient cultures is no joke. I'm not even interested in a scholarly way, just pure enthusiasm to learn the way in which these ancient peoples lived. Ancient cultures have always seemed significantly less human to me, at least compared to how we would think of modern-day culture. And this is what interested me so greatly, discovering what natural human culture was like. I've traveled all over the world just to explore, experience, and gain more knowledge. And this trip was no different, at least in the beginning. I always made sure I did sufficient research before plunging into any sort of exploration or visitation in an unknown place. I had read earlier this month on a travel blog that the city of Teotihuacan, or Place of the Gods, was one of the most interesting and mysterious places in all of Mexico. The strange thing about this ancient city, however, is that while it was found and named by the Aztecs, the city's creators are lost to history. Out of all the places I had been, this one terrified me the most. Stories I read of strange disappearances and dark, untouched human sacrifice vaults ran through my head as I rode the bus from Mexico City out to the site of the abandoned city. When the city first came into view, I immediately knew it would be one of the most incredible places I had ever visited. I could hardly believe that we still don't know who had created these magnificent structures. The temples were tens of stories tall, their bases spanning hundreds upon hundreds of feet. The sandy greenish-brown color of the structures seeming to blend into the surrounding area, as well as the refraction caused by the extreme heat of the day, nearly 110 degrees Fahrenheit, made the city look as if it was rising out of the surrounding grass and sand-patched areas, like a mirage. I was so excited I could hardly wait for the bus to stop before I jumped out of my seat and bounded out the door. I stood in the middle of the main portion of the city and did a quick 360-degree turn to get an idea of what I was working with. The largest temple, called Temple of the Sun, looked like a tall flight of stairs from the front that expanded outwards as far as I could see, into a stacked square pyramid structure. It was unbelievably large in person, and I could imagine easily exhausting myself trying to climb all those stairs in one go. I could hardly think of what to do first. I knew, of course, that I eventually would have to climb the steps of the main temple and get a photo of myself looking grandiose for my daughter, but I simply could not resist exploring the smaller structures first. There were 8 other pyramid-type structures in total, each surrounding the middle area that appeared to be some sort of shared common space. Each of these pyramid structures looked identical to the top portion of the large temple, as if someone had used copy and paste in Photoshop multiple times over. I'd been so absorbed in these structures that I'd yet to notice that there were tons of other people around me. Men, women, and children, all visiting the city today. But none nearly as excited about being here as I. Soon, I realized that all this excitement, along with the little sleep I'd gotten the previous night, had made me quite tired, and I needed to rest my legs for a bit. I slouched into a conveniently placed bench near the middle of the city, its top lightly dusted in sand. I took a few minutes to relax and people watch for a bit. It was then that I saw the opening. Just a small, misshapen hole with sharp edges on the side of one of the smaller pyramidal buildings. My curiosity carried my body over to the wall without conscious thought. I stupidly put my eye up against the hole and tried to get a glimpse of what I thought would be an interesting hidden detail in the city. I hadn't realized by this point that I was leaning on the wall with quite a bit of pressure. I started hearing sounds, as if the wall was shifting. Then cracks began to extend on the wall, and suddenly, the wall crumbled to pieces, like a window being shattered. I yelled like a little girl, or maybe that was one of the children that screamed when the wall collapsed. I can't remember. Several tour guides and local archaeologists sprinted over asking me, "What is it?" and "What happened?" But I did not answer. All I could do was stare at what I had uncovered. There were only two things in the newly discovered chamber, one being a simple carving on the wall that was not even 2 feet wide. I could hardly even tell that there had been a carving there at all, and would have missed it had I not been staring directly at it by chance. But that wasn't all I had found in that room. There was something else, something terrifying. In the corner of the room, where the rays of the sun barely touched, was a corpse, curled in the fetal position. From what I could see, it looked human, but it appeared as if it would stand nearly 8 feet tall. It did not seem fresh. It looked thousands of years old, but was semi-preserved like the mummies of Egypt. It was shriveled and brown, its skin cracked, making it look like a man covered in dried mud or old leather. I turned away from the horrible thing and tried to force it out of my mind, but it was all I could see when I closed my eyes. I cannot clear it from my memory. Once everyone had realized what had happened, I noticed that the archaeologists seemed thrilled, while the tour guides seemed shocked, and honestly, some of them looked a little terrified. We were all told that visitation of the city would be closed to the outside public for at least a few days. The majority of the tourists sighed in disappointment. I was let down by the announcement as well, but I was also glad to be leaving the place that housed that horrifying sight. While many of the archaeologists on site stayed to continue the investigation of the chamber, a few headed back to Mexico City with the rest of the tourists, and I was lucky enough to have one riding on my bus. My Spanish is not great, but I picked up what I could from talking to him. Conversation written in English. "Do you know anything about what I accidentally discovered back there?" I asked. "We have yet to find any conclusive evidence about the origin of Teotihuacan, and we believe this could be a gateway that could aid in our research," he replied. I nodded and paused a second before asking my next question. "Do you know what was shown on the side of the chamber?" I asked. "We believe that is a picture-based writing language, similar to Egyptian hieroglyphics. Our best guess of what it depicts is an Aztec belief of semi-human entities called lost souls," he replied with a slight shake in his voice. "What exactly does semi-human mean?" I asked with genuine curiosity. He went on to explain, "We aren't exactly sure what the Aztecs meant by this, but we believe that is a way of describing someone who has lost their humanity through forced human sacrifice, or other means. In other words, someone who is put to rest, but attempts to cling to this world. His words shook me to my core. We both remained silent for the rest of the ride back to Mexico City. I remained in Mexico City for a few more days, enjoying the food and culture as best as I could. But I could not shake the image of that shriveled up, elongated body out of my head. After this interesting yet creepy experience, I was exhausted and excited to go back home the day of my flight. My flight went relatively uninterrupted, save a mild cough that bothered me every once in a while. I did notice a strange sound, however. The occasional sound of leather rubbing against leather. Probably just someone's shoes. Phoenix, Arizona, United States. I arrived home late last night, tired and ready to go to bed. My daughter Marie was staying with my ex-wife while I was away, and I was somewhat glad as I would not be woken from my long, travel-fueled rest early in the morning. When I opened up the front door, I tore off my clothes as fast as I could, as if they hurt to keep on. My eyes closed the second my head hit the pillow, and I was fast asleep. I awoke suddenly, hours later, to a strange noise, a wretched, painful one, I heard coming from above my room. Thinking it was just the house settling, I attempted to go back to sleep. As soon as I closed my eyes again, I heard the same noise, a sort of scraping noise, like feet across unfinished wood. My eyes snapped open, and I jolted up out of bed. After my experience in Mexico, I was absolutely terrified, justifiably, of any dark small rooms. So before I even left my bedroom, I grabbed a flashlight that I kept near my bedstand in case of a power outage. I opened my door as quietly as I could, yet it still creaked open, the silence of the night amplifying the noise. I was just about to write off the noises, and then I heard it again, this time louder. It started sounding out more and more frequently the closer I got to the source, my attic. The closer I got, the more I recognized the sound, and couldn't help but think back to the leather against leather sound I had heard on the plane. I slowly and cautiously crept up the ladder that led to my attic, expecting a burglar or a raccoon that had gotten into my house somehow. But it was not what I expected. In the corner of the shadowy room, my flashlight caught a glimpse of something. Something that looked like mud. I swept the beam over the corner again, and I saw it. It looked like a dead body. Then it hit me. It looked as if it was the same corpse from Teotihuacan. The exact same one. I ran as fast as my legs could carry me to the attic ladder, nearly tripping as I did so, and climbed down the ladder, knocking it down in the process, and falling on the floor, making a hefty amount of noise, including a booming thud. With no time to look over my wounds, I bolted out of the house, shutting the door behind me. I ran to my neighbor's house as quickly as I possibly could, mud squelching below my feet as I ran. Fear gripped me, even in the short run between our two front yards. I banged on my next-door neighbor's front door so loud, I think I woke the entire neighborhood up. But I didn't care. I was too terrified to care. My neighbor was a sweet old man who was always ready to help me on housework, yard work, or just about anything. But tonight was different. He creaked open the door slowly, answering it. As soon as he saw me, he immediately tried to hide the disgust that was showing on his face. "What could you possibly want at this hour?" he asked, grumbling. "I need to use your phone to call the police right now. I think someone broke into my house," I explained. After this, he didn't say a word to me, just stared at me, looking horrified. I thought this was odd that he did not care to hear the details, or even ask if I was alright. "Is there something wrong?" I asked. He glanced in my face before snapping away, wide-eyed. "You look terrible. I think you should go see a doctor," he said. I asked him if I could use his bathroom mirror, and he pointed me in the direction of a small bathroom only a few feet down a hallway. When I arrived in the bathroom, at first, I thought that my eyes were deceiving me. Who I saw in the mirror was not myself, but myself perhaps in several years. I looked as if I had not slept in days. My eyes were bloodshot. My skin was sagging like an old woman's, pale and dry, as if it had not seen the sun for months. What the? I stammered. I could not believe my own eyes, and as creeped out as I was by myself, my adrenaline was still pumping. I tried to ignore the image of myself in my head, and quickly went to finish what I had come to his house to do: call the police. 911, what's your emergency?" the operator asked. I think I found a dead body in my house. I think someone broke in and left it there like some sort of sick joke," I replied. I told the operator my address and other personal information, and she told me that a squad car would be there in about 10 minutes. She told me to just stay calm and wait for the officer to arrive. Easier said than done. I waited outside my house in the dark of night, the cold air blowing against my face. The longest 10 minutes of my life. The entire time I kept getting chills down my spine, and could not shake the feeling that someone was watching me. When the officer finally did arrive and got out of his car, he stared at me a few seconds before saying, "You alright, bud? After we get all this sorted out, I can give you a lift to the hospital. You look terrible." "Yeah, I know. I think I'm just a little sleep deprived, but I will get it checked," I replied. He then got down to business, asking me details of what happened and what it was that I found. I told him everything that had happened that night. I refused to go back into the house, but told him the exact location of the body and how to get there. As I waited, I was terrified that he would not return, but he did. In all my years as an officer, that is possibly the most disturbing thing I have ever seen. That body looks damn old. I have a team headed over right now that can move it out of the house and send it over to forensics to have an investigation done," he said with a half-terrified look on his face. "Also, I can give you a ride to the hospital right now if you want," he added. Even though I didn't really want to go to the hospital, anywhere would beat being home right now, so I accepted his offer. At the hospital, I thought I started feeling the effects of my lack of sleep, but it felt a little strange. My name was called at the front desk pretty quickly, as it was still very early in the morning, so there were not many patients in the waiting room. I was led down a long, poorly lit hallway and entered a bright white doctor's office where I was told to take a seat. He started by asking me a few general questions. Have you gotten a lot of sleep recently? He inquired. Not exactly. I just got home from a trip to Mexico late last night. There were also a few strange things that happened last night, I said, as I let out a false chuckle. Are you eating enough? He asked. I guess so, I replied. Are you feeling any pain? He questioned. No, I replied, feeling quite tired. He droned on, asking several more general health questions of me, but I could no longer focus on him. There was something at the end of the dark hallway. A dark shape, unmoving, tall. A bony humanoid shape, with shiny white eyes. The details were lost in the darkness, but the thing was apparent. What is that? I yelled at the top of my lungs, pointing at the thing at the end of the hallway. The doctor turned his head quickly, and I blinked, but by the time he looked, it was gone. Are you feeling all right, sir? He asked, looking concerned. Did you not see that? There was a thing, a man, a monster, whatever it was, at the end of the hallway. I shouted. I couldn't tell if I was imagining things. Sir, please keep your voice down. This is a hospital. I think I'm going to have to get you some help right now. You are clearly in a foggy mental state right now, the doctor said with a calm voice. The doctor called in 2 nurses, one of which asked me to follow them down another hallway, perpendicular to the one in which I had seen that thing. They led me into an overnight room, where they told me I could spend the night. It was a simple room, a TV sitting on a table opposite a hospital bed, and a nightstand next to the bed. The room was painted bright blue and white, the 2 colors lit up by bright overhead lights. The 2 nurses prepared to leave the room. Please don't leave me here alone, I begged. I have to help Dr. Allen with a patient right now. You should stay, one nurse said to the other. I was happy, if only for a brief moment, to not be alone. At the forensics lab, 2 forensic scientists have a brief conversation about their most recent investigation. One tells the other about a strange shriveled body found in somebody's house. What sick bastard would break into somebody's house and leave a disgusting body like that? One said to the other. What a world we live in, replied the other. The 2 scientists re-enter the room with the body. However, the disgusting curled up remains are nowhere to be seen. The 2 scientists call up the police station and tell them that the body, somehow, has been stolen. The doctors don't believe me. They think that my unknown disease is affecting my cognitive functions, but I know what I see every night. I am now a permanent resident of the hospital, as the doctors attempt to figure out what is making my body lose fluids at an alarming rate. I can feel myself slipping, as if I'm drying up. Each day is more painful than the last. I'm going to die. Every night I wake up in darkness. When I ask the doctors why the lights turn off at night, they tell me they don't. When I wake up, the only thing I can see is a humanoid figure cast in moonlight. It is tall. Long arms hang by its side, hardly moving. Sometimes it is hunched in the doorway. Sometimes it sits in the corner of my room. but most of the time, it just appears as a curled up corpse on the edge of my field of view. All dark, but shining white eyes that peer through the darkness. It is so thin. It stares at me. It won't stop. Whenever I look away, I can hear that faint leather on leather sound. Its ancient skin. I never see it move, but I can hear it moving. The fear constricts my lungs, and I can hardly breathe. I try to pretend that I am asleep, but I know that it knows that I'm faking. It won't stop staring. I can feel the moisture leaving my skin. I am afraid this fear will eventually kill me. The doctors don't believe me. I'm going to die. Phoenix, Arizona, United States. Years later. I have been doing some research about the ancient city Teotihuacan. Some conspiracy theorists on the internet claim that the city was created by aliens, but I don't believe it. I am close to finding out what happened to my father. I have learned that the majority of ritual sacrifices in Teotihuacan were on unwilling victims, those who society had deemed unnatural or strange. I have come in contact with a few experts in South American ancient history, and I think I have a pretty good idea of what happened to my father. These experts don't really believe these stories, but brush them off as ancient folklore. Those who were unwillingly sacrificed are not ready to go to the afterlife. They refuse to leave the living world and will do whatever they can to remain. They take a monstrous form in which they can steal the life from the living, so that they can stay where they were once unwanted. They are not supposed to be here. Once the lost spirits have smelled your blood, they will not stop. I have my father's blood in me. I am close to finding out what happened to my father, but I do not have enough time. My father was the first. I am the second. My children are the third. I do not have enough time. I can see it looking at me from the darkness outside my window. An unmoving, tall, shadowy figure. Such shiny white eyes, staring into my own. When I look away, I can hear a sickening, wet, fleshy noise when it shifts. Its movement reminds me that it is now truly alive. A monstrously wide grin of jumbled human teeth. Human, and yet a monster. I am so afraid. My skin feels a bit dry.
Hey everyone, I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you want to see more, let me know in the comments below, and tell me what you thought of this narration. Make sure to follow me on Twitter for updates, and if you'd like to get early videos, shoutouts, and much more, I'd appreciate it if you check out my Patreon page. It's a place where you can help support my channel while getting awesome rewards in the process, and every pledge helps out a ton, no matter the size. So if you'd like to see all the rewards I offer and consider becoming a patron, it'd mean a ton to me if you'd click the link in the description and just check it out. And don't forget to show some love to the amazingly talented authors who make these narrations possible. Have a good night, everybody. Cheers.